Hello and welcome to On the Shelf, episode 2, the little series in which I explore and explain just what's on my bookshelves. And the first episode was maybe a little on the long side because I was explaining the whole purpose. And just in case you missed that, just quickly, a couple of things that are really important. First of all, this very indulgent thing was requested by a few people, and some people have watched the first one, which was remarkable in itself. So here I am doing a second one. Let's see how it goes. And the second thing is that I'm going to be honest about the books, in terms of, I suppose, how useful they were to me, but also whether I've actually read them or not, because it's this Umberto Eco concept of the anti-library, and he says that as far as your finances should allow, you should have books on your shelves that you haven't read, because your library is a prism, I suppose, a collection of your thoughts, ideas, your journey into knowledge. So while there'll be lots of books on there you've read, there'll be some books on there you haven't, because they're just parked. They're waiting for that moment of inspiration when you pick them off the shelf and you read them. And that's happened many times over the years with me, where I've just been flicking through the shelves and thought, I forgot I had that. Let's read it now. So what have I pulled off the shelf today? I'm literally just going along. I've picked a shelf and I'm going along that shelf, and I've got some absolute corkers for you today. 5 books. I thought 5 was a goodly number. So the first one, this is a really important book in my world. Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. This post-it note here isn't in the book for today to remind me to do something, although it is where I'm going to have a look. It says start here, because in my journey of contemplation about all things around well-being and emotional resilience and emotional intelligence, this was the book that kind of got me started in thinking about it. So this Daniel Goleman book, Daniel Goleman's written loads of books on emotional intelligence, social intelligence and all that kind of thing, so really important writer. And I thought I'd read you a bit of this, because that's what I'm doing. I'm reading a little bit of it. And this book, I read it so long ago that I hadn't got into the habit of underlining things and taking notes from it to put in my Obsidian system, that kind of thing. Hadn't done that yet. So unfortunately this thing was in here, but I had a bit of a flick as well, chock full of knowledge. And he says this, so this is Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence. When emotions overwhelm concentration, what is being swamped is the mental capacity cognitive scientists call working memory, the ability to hold in mind all information relevant to the task at hand. What occupies working memory can be as mundane as digits that compose a telephone number, or as complicated as the intricate plot lines a novelist is trying to weave together. Working memory is an executive function par excellence in mental life, making possible all other intellectual efforts, from speaking a sentence to tackling a knotty logical proposition. The prefrontal cortex executes working memory, and remember is where feelings and emotions meet. When the limbic circuitry that converges on the prefrontal cortex is in a thrall of emotional distress, one cost is in the effectiveness of working memory. We can't think straight. There you go. Brilliant. He talks about not being able to think straight during a calculus exam. When we are overwhelmed by the emotional content in our lives, can't think straight. And that's what Daniel Goleman talks about. Great book. The other one is really good. Soojung-Kim Pang, Rest. I mean, I got really interested again. The books that I like all seem to gravitate together. Although not all of them are in that zone. So Rest. Why you get more done when you work less. This is really important. This is where I first came across this concept of the default mode network that I talk about sometimes during my sessions. Here's a bit from this book. This is the second of these 5 that is definitely worth a read. Studies of the default mode network and mind wandering help us make sense of a phenomena that has long puzzled psychologists. Many famous stories of problem solving or creative breakthroughs begin with a period of intense work and focus during which the scientist or artist or writer pores over evidence, labours over theories, and struggles towards an answer. Frustrated and tired, she stops for a break and turns her attention to something else. Days or weeks later, a solution suddenly appears. She hadn't been thinking about the problem, but in a flash, the answer is suddenly present in her mind, clear as day. She then returns to the problem and verifies that the insight is correct. That's your default mode network. If you've heard me talking before about productivity, about rest, about well-being, you'll have heard me talk about that. And this model goes on to describe by English psychologist Graham Wallace in a book called The Art of Thought. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but in the book breaks it down into steps. First stage, preparation, consists of all the conscious, visible activity around the problem. The writing you've got, the thinking you've got, all that kind of stuff. Then we sometimes hit a wall, he says. So the second thing you have to do is then move to the second stage in his model, which is incubation. You've just got to give it time, particularly if you're looking at a big problem. And then third, your unconscious, that default mode network, that unconscious mind will drive to the third phase, which is illumination. And from there, once you've illuminated the fact, you can go off and verify it. He talks about mind wandering in the book and says how really important it is. That's Rest by Alex Soojung-Kim Pang. This one I have not read, because look how thick it is. It's massive. My friend Jamie put me onto this. Karl Popper. I really need to read this. I bought it because what I was being told by Jamie was felt important. It felt important to have this on my shelf, so I was ready for it. So it's Karl Popper, philosopher, The Open Society and Its Enemies, Volume 1. So this is not even it. This is Volume 1. The Spell of Plato. I just flick it and look at it. Do you smell your books? I love the fresh smell of a new book. I know, bizarre, but lots of people do. I think there's a word for it. So I need to get into that at some point, but it's a weighty tome. In fact, it isn't, really, if I'm being honest, because if I flick through it, the notes in the back, the notes, the book only goes up to page 214, and the notes take us up into the 400s. So actually, the book is only half of that, and the notes are the other half. But really, that's one of the problems, isn't it? Because sometimes, especially with philosophical writers, the notes are just as important. You've got to dig into them. Which brings me on to the next book. And honestly, again, what a little clutch of books they are. Because this, again, is one of the most important books that I've ever read. But you know what I hate? The words on the spine are the wrong way up. See, they're the wrong way. Nearly all of my books are like this one. One or two, I've got a couple that are like this. Really annoys me. So sometimes I store it on the shelf the wrong way up, but then that annoys me as well. Anyway, this book, How to Take Smart Notes, is what got me into a product called Obsidian. And Obsidian is like your second brain. Obsidian is a way to collate and connect the notes that you take. The writer of this, Sonke, Ahrens, says, nobody ever writes anything from scratch. People use their accumulated notes to write things. Writing is thinking. There's loads of things popping in my head when I think about this book. So Obsidian is a free product that helps you consolidate and think about your notes. If you want to really understand something, he says, you have to translate it into your own words. No matter how internal processes are implemented, you need to understand the extent to which the mind is reliant upon external scaffolding. We can't remember everything, we can't bring everything to mind. In fact, now I go into my Obsidian vault. I also do a series of tools to support students. There's only a couple of videos over that at the minute. I'm going to get onto a little series of Obsidian vault tutorials, I suppose, because there are things in my Obsidian vault that I can't even remember putting in there now. But I do a search for a particular topic and up they pop. Richard Feynman stresses this thing as much as Benjamin Franklin did. If we write, it is more likely that we understand what we read. If we write, it is more likely we understand what we read. Remember that we learn and that our thoughts make sense. So it's 3 things. If we write, it's more likely that we understand what we read, remember what we learn, and that our thoughts make sense, because we're writing them down. Yeah, writing is thinking. That's another quote by someone I can't remember. And if we have to write anyway, why not use our writing to build up resources for the future? Why not do that? And that's kind of what I do. That's what this Obsidian Vault does as well. Brilliant book. How to Take Smart Notes. How to Take Smart Notes by Sonke, Ahrens. Absolutely brilliant. And finally, and briefly, I haven't read a great deal of this. This is one of those dippy in books, I feel. And it's Lao Tzu. Whether or not, it says on the back, whether or not Lao Tzu was a historical figure is uncertain, but the wisdom gathered under this name in the 4th century BC is central to the understanding and practice of Taoism. This is the Tao Chi Ching. And it's one of those little books that they read to me like little poems. I suppose that's to do with my cultural heritage and that kind of thing, I suppose. Or maybe they are poems, I don't know. So it's a dippy in book, and I've got a few of these along the shelves as we come to them, some dippy in books. And I'm going to finish with this. He who knows others is clever. It's brilliant. He who knows himself has discernment. Brilliant. He who overcomes others has force, but he who overcomes himself is strong. Brilliant. He who knows contentment is rich. He who perseveres is a man of purpose. Perseverance, really important. He who does not lose his station will endure. He who lives out his days has had a long life. I'm going to say that again. He who lives out his days has had a long life. That's the important thing there. It's the living of those days, not simply the days, but some brilliant pearls of wisdom in there. He who knows others is clever. It's so important that we connect. He who knows himself has discernment. So important that we know how we tick. In fact, that takes us back to, by chance really, not by design, back to the first book, about emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman's book. And I love this. He who overcomes others has force. I'm thinking, that's not a good thing. But the second line, he who overcomes himself is strong. You can force stuff on people if you want to, but if you can overcome yourself, you're strong. He who knows contentment is rich. Such a great message for the modern world. Brilliant. There you go. Lao Tzu, Tao Chi Ching. Good stuff. Episode 2 done. What did we do? We looked at Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. Read it. Rest by Alex Soojung-Kim Pang. Read it. Karl Popper, The Open Society and Its Enemies, Volume 1, The Spell of Plato. It's in my anti-library. How to Take Smart Notes, Sonke Ahrens. Read it. Lao Tzu, Tao Chi Ching. Dippy in. See you next time.